Hello and welcome to a CBK gaming video. Join us as we discuss and review Oathsworn by Shadow Borne Games. So, what is Oathsworn and does it belong in your collection? I think it's right to say yes. This game belongs in your collection if you enjoy narrative, story-driven board games with great miniatures and a really well-developed campaign. Voiced, if you use the option to have the app running, by James Cosmo, who does a phenomenal job of bringing the world, the characters to life. It was a really good choice to get James Cosmo doing that read through. Why do we think that you should have this game in your collection? There's a number of things. One of the first ones is setup time. So the first time you buy the game, sit down, get it, put all the pieces together. It will take you a while. Once you've done that, it takes 10 minutes to set a game up. It takes less than 10 minutes to take it down. Gloomhaven, Folklore, Tainted Grail take far longer to set up. And I really respect that. We can set the game up and start playing and have a game in an evening. Sometimes that's not possible with Folklore or Tainted Grail, or even Gloomhaven. So that's a really good positive. They've also taken the option that you can use cards or dice, or a mixture of both. The monsters will always attack you using cards, and it works well.
Yeah. Personally,
when I'm playing the Cur, I always use dice. It just feels right for the Cur. Whereas I know you playing the Warbear, use the cards a lot more.
Yeah.
It just feels character specific at times, which I really like.
But it's nice when you're using the deck of cards, you've got that bit of assurance that you know what's already come up in the deck, so you know whether your chances are going to be good or bad. So do you risk it with just a random throw of the dice, or do you know there's still some pretty good cards left in the deck, so let's go with those? And you've got that choice. Or you can mix them.
Yeah.
If you go, I know there's going to be a really good card in that deck, but then I've also got, let's try random and throw these dice in with it. You can do whatever you choose or whatever your character would do if you want to stay in character.
You can also use abilities, which we'll discuss shortly, to reshuffle the cards.
Yeah.
So if you know there's only rubbish cards left, you can shuffle them and move it that way. The game itself, the miniatures are larger. Everything is bigger and epic looking on the table. It does mean that this game does take a lot of space on the table. Looks phenomenal, but you have to be aware of that. The characters themselves are all really interesting, slight differences to them. The abilities really do work thematically with the character. Unlike Gloomhaven, one of my biggest dislikes for Gloomhaven is that once you've used an ability, you have to rest to get it back. Makes no sense when you're using things like backstab. Might do with magic, backstab, but punching, kicking, it's really ludicrous in my mind. And it really throws me out of the game. Here, you don't have that. You have the board, and then you have numbers 0, 1, 2 and 3, which are locations where your cards go as you play them, and you have to battle flow them around to get them back into your hand. So you don't lose an ability, you just can't use it immediately again unless you have some way of getting it back to your hand, and that works really well.
Yeah, it teaches you card management, but at the same time thematically it's that you've used this huge ability and you haven't forgotten how to do it, and you don't need to go to sleep or sit down for an hour to get it back. You just need a couple of minutes to build your energy back up again, and those couple of minutes is where you use your card management to battle flow it back round into your hand. It continues the theme and keeps you in the game as you're in this battle against a monster.
And then you have this whole way of working with your character. You then have a time tracker for your story phase, which goes from sun up to sundown, gives you all different actions, different things happening as you play throughout the game. That works really well.
And depending on the choices you make during that, depends on how far you get during the day as to whether you've taken too long and things happen, whether you've done things too quickly and you haven't achieved everything. It's a very clever but subtle mechanic.
We've gone into a game where we've fallen straight into the fight with the monster. We didn't have any knowledge or intelligence about that monster. There's other games where we've managed to find information out so you can prepare your deck of cards. You can prepare the weapons that you want to use. And that works really, really well. If you always need to have 4 characters, but if you don't want, if there's not 4 players, but you want the other characters to be played, you can play them as characters rather than as players. It makes it slightly easier. Companions, sorry, not characters. They're slightly easier to use. You get card and information on how to play those. Personally, I just use them as a normal character. It works really well, but it does mean you have to juggle some of the abilities, multiple abilities, multiple characters. Also, you're given these, it's called the armory, so you can add individual weapons to your character. Initially, I really liked this idea. 10 chapters in, we're not using it as much, but I think what it means is that when you've got the character set up how you like to sit visually, I think I like that. You know, I've got daggers or swords in my Kerr's hands. It just means you can have it set up in the way you like.
I mean, we've got other games where the figures are as they are, but then you've picked up a weapon that you're going to stick with for the rest of the game and it doesn't quite match. It's nice to have that option that if you go, I mean, I've got one character I'm playing and I know the style of weapon I want that character to play. So that's the piece that I've put on the model. So she looks like her character. And it's a nice option to have.
I think if you look on screen now, you'll see a number of photographs of the player characters. This review is spoiler free. So this is the things that you can see right at the outset. And there's some fascinating characters here. You've got the polar bear, Ursus, who I know you enjoy playing.
Yeah.
The witch, a fantastic character. I've played the huntress, I've played the ranger, I've played the Kerr, and I'm really looking forward to trying some of the other characters. Their styles seem different, and actually within the game, we've found sometimes tests are easier if you have certain characters. Can be harder if you have certain characters. Some options aren't available if you don't have certain characters in the party. That works really well.
And I like that because it varies the story as well, because the next time we come to start the campaign with other friends, depending on what characters they pick, can completely change the story that we may already have gone through, but the choices we're going to make and the characters we're going to have with us, it's going to be completely different.
Yes. And then on the table, you have the terrain. Now, if you don't have the terrain pack, you use these cards, as you'll see on the screen now. And they're good. They do what they say on the tin. But then you've got these actual terrain pieces, and they look so good on the table. We haven't painted any of our miniatures at the moment, and I know Joel and Di have, and they look amazing. So I'm really looking forward to actually painting these as well. And I think because they're larger miniatures, they've got so much detail, and the monsters look amazing. So you've also got the metal coins, which you could purchase. We always like having those metal coins. It's a really well done, well developed, well designed game. The mechanics. The game is set into 2 phases. You have the story phase where you have a map. We haven't put the map down because we don't want to have any spoilers. but you travel through that map. You can't do everything. You find things, you investigate issues. Sometimes you're given alternative paths. You may immediately find what you're looking for. Sometimes you end up in some quite unpleasant locations. That's got this timer mechanic, and you can have the app, which James Cosmo voices where you're going, what's happening. That's really well done. Really brings the whole story together. Or you can read it yourself. Then that leads you inevitably to find the monster. Those will always be the same. The monster encounter will always be the same. How you get there, what you understand, what you know will always be slightly different. Mm-hmm. And that's played on this large map. And yeah, the story mode has taken 10 minutes at the quickest, up to 2 hours. A combat encounter has taken, I think we've done one in half an hour and about 2 hours for one of them as well. Fighting's all done through these cards, which have a cost associated, and you have to spend animus points. You have a certain pool, and then you regenerate a certain amount, and you use those to fight and defend yourself against these monsters and perhaps minions. And monsters themselves, they can be a huge miniature, they could be a little miniature, they could be a host of other miniatures, it might be a huge miniature and a load of other miniatures. We've fought such diverse monsters, it's been fantastic. Mechanics, you have loads of different mechanics. So you've got poison, bleed counters, trap counters, and the monster details will tell you what that means. So the poison counters don't have a specific, you lose a wound at X, Y, and Z. Instead, it tells you on the monster card what that means. Because sometimes it might mean you're losing armor, sometimes it means that you're losing health. Overall, a really well done game that we really enjoy and highly recommend.
Yeah.
That you go and, if you can buy it, do so. If not, there's a Kickstarter coming out soon by Shadow Borne Games to reprint this. And there might be a few additions, but there's no expansion. They've said there might be a few different things that we can purchase. But overall, a really phenomenal game, great quality, a lot of time, a lot of passion put into this.
Yeah, I mean the guys at Shadow Borne were telling us they spent a year developing,
I think it was longer,
the world and the lore around it before they even looked at mechanics and putting a game towards it. Mm-hmm. They just wanted to create this world, create the story, all the laws and the mythology around it, and then started going, now we'll design a story for the characters to go through. Now that we've got the story they're going to go on, how can we put a board game mechanic into that? Mm-hmm. And I think the attention to detail they've put and all of that caring about, it really does show in the game. Yeah. It's superbly done.
One thing I realise I haven't mentioned is how you kill monsters, because that's a little bit different. Monsters all have a number of locations which have dice set to 6 on them. You have to destroy all those locations to defeat a monster, but each time you defeat a location they have a reaction. Their deck for attack and reaction is set in different stages, 1, 2 and 3, and they get nastier as you go along. That works really well. And actually we've found ourselves just trying to damage all the locations before we just start then blatting away at them and destroying all the locations as quickly as we can. It's really good because you can have a monster, you can attack a monster, destroy a location, its reaction makes it run away. So you have to think about your placement, you have to think about how you are going to fight. You've got a lot of tools in your toolbox to stop them, but you have to work together. You'll see on the screen now just a number of different ability cards that these characters have, and they all allow you to do slightly different things, whether it's the Cur's ability to add bleed, whether it's actually the Ranger and the Warbear being able to add bleed tokens as well. You can do some quite there are some quite interesting synergies in this game, and they're quite interesting to find. Really like working with the Witch. I think the Witch is really good, putting water down, which enables her to stop the progress so much of minions or even of the larger monsters.
Yeah, and what I like about the Witch being the magic user is she works off of fire or ice, and every round she gets to place either fire or ice in her vicinity, which can affect the monsters coming at you. But at the same time, to then cast some of her spells, she needs to consume them again. So there's a nice balance there of trying to work out how many of the tiles you want to put down against the monster, but keeping count of them, because you're going to need to take some away to do the next spell to actually damage the monster. And it's a lovely balance in there. Yeah.
So overall, there's a lot of game here. They reckon between 45 and 65 hours of game. I think there's quite a bit of replayability with different characters and different paths. I absolutely love this game. We're going to be playing it a lot. We already did. We already played it. We're halfway through the campaign. The next section of the review is going to be full of spoilers. We're going to talk about specific encounters. We're going to talk about specific mechanics. So, if you're leaving now, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please consider liking. Please consider subscribing. We'll be bringing more and more reviews to you as we go along. If you're still here, grab yourself a coffee, grab yourself a cup of tea, come back and we'll start talking about specific encounters and specific mechanics that we really enjoy. So the spoiler version will start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you're still here, you want to know more about the game, more about specific encounters. So pull your seat up, let's talk about some of those interesting mechanics and monsters. You will have all seen the brood mother, the large rat with the minions. That's a fantastic introduction to the monsters that are in this game. The next monster that you come across is satyr or satyr. It's got a different set of mechanics. It's one monster, doesn't have loads of other minions on this occasion. It's a large miniature. You'll see an image of it on the screen now. And it's got these hypnotic abilities that can make your characters do things like throw your weapons away, take your armour off, attack yourself.
I think he's so beautiful that you don't want to hurt him, so you only do half the amount of damage.
That works really well. First time round it's quite disorientating, quite different. You do come across a satyr again later on, and the way that plays out is really well done. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's just one of these different, unique style of playing or having the monsters fight you. There was another, the worm.
I was going to say, my favourite monster that we've come across so far has been the worm.
The worm.
Yeah. Not to fight it, that was tough, but for the mechanics of it, it was incredible, so thematic.
So you're going to see the worm on the screen now and its card, and it sort of swam through the soil and had an ability to consume, which was terrifying because suddenly we were down to 3 characters as our witch got consumed and was stuck in the stomach part of the monster. Now, we could get her out, but we had to destroy the location, so it meant we were trying to hunt down that location. We did have an archer, and that made a big difference.
And the fact that the witch could still try and fight. She was restricted, but she could still try and fight from inside out. but naturally you're still taking damage because you're now inside its stomach with its sort of acidic juices eating away at your armour.
Yeah,
And
it was a really good, hard fight that I'm looking forward to doing again and actually trying at the harder difficulty.
Yeah.
Other things that we found that are really interesting. So in this card box Z here, was the fall of Bastion, and the first city that you're in, you have to run. And one of the choices we made, I played the Huntress, and she died because of a choice I made at that point. I still find it. I think it was the right decision to make.
Yeah. We were all just quite shocked.
Yeah. And
that we'd made choices that had led us to having to make that decision to let her go.
We then had these cards, and we had a suggested hint of where we should be going, and we had to find the wire road to get to Vellum.
Yeah.
And that was hard. A really different, really interesting way to play the game. I expect that's going to be coming up again. We found different things, and there was a really difficult fight after that against a number of sort of barbaric monsters that the more you killed of them, the harder they became.
But I think this was an ingenious way of doing it, because when you're in the city, you've got a map of the city. When you're fighting in the woods, you've got the board with the woods on it. But when you're travelling between, if you know where you're going, why do you need another map to put out on the table to do it? When you don't know where you're going, you've suddenly got these cards to try and work out your direction of which way you should be going. And it just gave that sense of being completely lost.
Yeah.
And not knowing where you are, but you know you've got to head roughly that direction, but whether you're going to do it in a straight line or whether there's things that you've got to work around. It was brilliantly done.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. So we got to Vellum, and that was interesting. There's some nasty things happening in Vellum, and we had some interesting encounters. I think we fought one of the paladins, for want of a better word. That was a difficult fight, and you got a nice set of armour.
Oh, that was lovely. Yeah.
And then were forced to give it back, which was quite funny, and I didn't expect that. But one of the most interesting and odd encounters, we'd completed a fight, and it was against a crustacean that had been using, had acidic slime, and some horrible things had been going on in a village outside in the middle of the forest. And we found a book, and we read that book, and we all suddenly appeared in a weird dream world. And there were children there, and we had to rescue the children. But if you lost your sanity in that location, your character was lost forever. And we got close. We almost lost 2 of our number.
Yeah.
We were doing really well, and then suddenly that was it. We started all going mad.
Yeah.
And there was a spider in the middle in a web that we had to defeat. But it wasn't a miniature, it was all on the map. It was all the story component.
Yeah.
And then we turned up, and we had to fight the satyr again. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. It was hard. There were puzzle elements. That worked really well. And I'm really looking forward to where this game goes. I think from everything I've heard, it maintains its uniqueness and unusual monsters and unusual mechanics. It's phenomenally good, and I know I keep saying, I keep using the word phenomenal. It really is to me. I think mechanically it It works well. We've not gone through a lot of the mechanics and bits. I mean, we don't want to spoil a lot of it for people. But being able to knock people into houses or to walls, doing damage to them works really well. Obviously the monsters get to do it back too.
But I mean, some of the ability cards that your characters pick up, it just matches the character. I mean, the fact that the bear can use the surrounding sort of figures that he can use trees,
use the trees
to sort of damage enemies. And when the witch levels up enough, you've already encountered the worm. One of her spells works similar to it, so you wonder if she's picked up on how the worm worked and gone, oh, I could create a spell that works similar and has that ability now. And it's brilliantly done.
And the leveling up process works really well, where you get more energy. You never get more hit points, but you do get the ability to regenerate animus more, or increase the number of animus you have. You get to increase your company's abilities, so you get some re-rolls, get to get extra items, etc. It really is a phenomenal game, which I just cannot recommend enough.
And you get to, as we're still leveling up, you get to personalise your characters. So we get to add an extra token, which can be a reroll token or a battle flow token. So because the bear I'm treating as, he's the tank, he's the one that can sort of take the damage. So levelling him up, I'm deciding to take extra shields so that he's got the extra armour to cope with that. And because you can personalise them for how you want them to fight every time you level up, it's really nice. It's not a generic, everyone gets an extra hit point. You get to choose what you want to do with your character and develop them your way, which someone else that plays the same character on another game might do it completely differently and might change the whole game then. Yeah,
it works. It does. It really works. And hats off to the guys at Shadow Borne Games. And James Cosmo, and I've forgotten the young lady that's done the maps.
The maps, but they're beautifully drawn.
They are phenomenal pieces of artwork.
Yeah.
So thank you for continuing to watch. If you're still watching the spoiler element, really hope you've enjoyed it. It just gives you a bit of an idea of what you can expect. On screen now are a number of those figures. The ones that we've come across anyway, and their boards, just to give you an idea of what you might see and the uniqueness of this game. Thank you, and if you have enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. It means a lot to us. The next set of reviews, we're going to be looking at Everrain, Massive Darkness 2, and Warfighter, the Shadow War, which is all the night fighting, will be coming shortly as well. So thank you very much, and see you next week.
Bye.